Hello everybody, this is Gregory with 5 Minute Catholic Apologetics and Living, where 5 minutes of your time may get you to the divine. Today, I'm going to pretend I'm a pastor in one experiment that I would implement in my church if I was a pastor. Now before we begin, let's start with a prayer. Nome Patris et Filii et Spiritui Sancti, Amen. Gloria Patri et Filii et Spiritus Sancto, secutor in principio et nunc et semper, et in saecula saeculorum. Amen. If you're new to the channel, I like to do my rosary and my prayers in Latin. It just connects me to the saints. And I thought doing a Glory Be at the beginning of every video would be a nice way to start it. So, first of all, would I ever want to be a pastor? Heck no. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Some people are like, if I was a pastor, I would do this, and the parish should be fixed. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe not. I would not want to be a pastor. Even if you're like, well, Gregory, you could have married pastors like at the ordinariate. No, I'd pass. I don't want to be a pastor. No interest. That being said, this is one of those episodes where you definitely want to put your answer in the comment box. Like, what changes would you make if you could be a pastor for a day? And those changes would stay for at least a year. What changes would you be making? Now, I'm a traditional Catholic. It's sad that we have to put that adjective in front of Catholic. As I mentioned in a very early episode, there's no such thing as a liberal Catholic. You either are practicing Catholic, doing the best you can. Of course, you're sinning all, but you're doing the best you can. Or you're not a Catholic at all. There should be really no adjectives in front of Catholics, aside from like Eastern Rite, Western Rite, or Latin Rite Catholics. But that being said, so I thought about like 7 changes I would make if I was a pastor. But no, I just want to do one little experiment. Now, we're talking about Our Lady of Suburbia, or Saint Typicals, as Father McTeague likes to say in the Catholic Current podcast. We're just talking about the typical one. Now, if you go to a TLM, if you're in the ordinariate, if you're in this super great parish where nothing can be fixed, that's great. So what I'm talking about is the generic suburban parish. We know what that parish is like. So what's my number one change? Well, I would say 2. Number 1 would be increase confessional times. Your job as a priest, like I don't care about if you have a good personality, if you're surly, if you're overly kind, you're the master of ceremony. I talked about, used to go to a mass where the priest would do the joke in the middle of mass, right before the liturgy of the Eucharist, and do the anniversaries and all this, and he was the kind of, hey, that kind of guy. Like, all I care about is your job is to parrot the teachings of the church. You're essentially an employee, so be orthodox in your teaching. Not Greek Orthodox. I don't want heterodox teaching. The other one is, give us the sacraments. So yes, more daily masses. If you only have 1, that's fine if you're a very small parish. But if you're a large parish, give us 2. But more importantly, give us confessional times. More confession times. I can't stand it when I see a bulletin. It's like confession, 4 to 4:30 or by appointment. It's like, but my big experimental change would be, let's have one mass, where we go old school. One mass, okay? Assuming there's no prohibitions from the Vatican. Let's do a Latin mass. One Latin mass. And you have to receive on the tongue. We create a little altar rail and add Orianum. And the music is either Gregorian chant, scola, no music, just simple music. Just one mass. Now some of you would be like, well, let's just do the whole parish should be this way. Every mass should be this. Look, again, first of all, you have to get permission. In this theoretical world, you have to get permission from your bishop to do these things. But let's just, in this theoretical world, we're not going to do every mass because this is an experiment. So if there is a mass, and I've gone to a parish back in the day in Dripping Springs outside of Austin that did Novus Ordo masses, and so they would move the altar to the middle, and then they had one Latin mass, and they'd lift it and push it against. So clearly it wasn't marble. They'd push it against the wall. But I would do one mass where we would have the aforementioned Ad Orienum, so the priest is facing the tabernacle. Yes, there would be a tabernacle in the church. Don't put baby in a corner. Don't put him in the closet, so to speak. And so what would you do if you didn't have altar rails? Like my parish, Saints Peter and Paul, still has the altar rails. They didn't get rid of them. But I've been to a church like the one in Dripping Springs. So they didn't have an altar rail. So what they would do is the first pews on either side were reserved. And so what you would do is you would get up, and you would just go into those first aisles. And then the priest would administer. So you can do it even if you don't have altar rails. And why do I want to do this experiment? One mass, good traditional music, Latin Mass, so it's in Latin. Low Mass, high Mass, I don't care. Alter rails ad orientem, you have to receive on the tongue. Because I think what you will see, people start gravitating to that Mass. They will go to that Mass, families will go to the Mass, and you'll see the regular Novus Ordo Masses be pretty empty. And that's the experiment. And I guarantee you, in a year, that Mass will be packed. And so you would think. Now, what would my experiment actually result in? Well, honestly, not much. No, long-term, not much. Short-term, I do think that Mass would be more crowded, because I think right now there is a move toward traditionalism, because we've seen the last 30, 40 years of how us trying to adapt to the modern times has proven to be fruitless. You can certainly see the mainline Protestant churches doing this, where they've embraced every secular belief, not just the liturgy, but also same-sex marriages, and even having homosexual or priests and priestesses, like in the Anglican order. So I do think there is this drive to want to come back to something more sacred, more solemn. So I do think that Mass would actually have more people. Now, let's say you fast forward 6 months later and that Mass is getting a lot of people and the other Masses are not getting a lot. We had talked about in a previous episode how you would think the typical pastor of Our Lady of St. Typicals is seeing that their average demographic, their average age of their sparsely attended Mass is like 65. But if you go to the TLMs, you go to the ordinary, the Chair of St. Peter, you go to the places that have traditional Masses, much younger, bigger families, Catholics that are practicing their faith. And you would think these pastors would be like, what are we doing wrong that they're doing right? And let's adapt it. But a lot of these pastors are ossified, or they suffer from pride, and they won't adapt. So let's say 6 months later, you see that this Mass has a lot of people and the other ones don't. And you would think, okay, let me go talk to the bishop. And you tell Bishop, look, we should really implement this. It's really working. Most bishops are going to not really listen. If anything, they're going to be hostile to your experiment. But I'm curious, what would you make as your experiment? If you could be a pastor for a day, aside from, you probably would agree, increasing confessional times, and maybe you don't agree with what I'm saying about having one traditional Mass where we do ad orientem and receive on the tongue. What would you like to do? The other thing would be fire the liturgical minister of music, the ministerial music director, and because lots of times, there's a lot of conflict and between the pastor, a well-intentioned pastor who wants to bring in more traditional music, and the liturgical director who does not. And that might be another one. But post in the comments. Until next time, take care and God bless.